Are you the sort of person who holds everything together in your career, your relationships, and maybe parenthood as well? And I'm sure you're very capable and responsible, but the issue is everybody's relying on you. Well, from the outside, I'm sure everything looks fine. But have you really got everything under control? Calm and competent on the surface, but maybe tense, stressed, or even close to exploding or collapsing underneath. And I'm sure you know that feeling of just running on fumes, like there's just absolutely nothing left to give. And if that all sounds really familiar, you're certainly not alone. And I'm hoping that this video is going to help you. In the next few minutes, I'll explain why this happens and why it doesn't really mean there's anything wrong with you at all. I want to tell you about how a grounded, practical method can help you get much more settled and present in your own life and body again without having to add yet another thing to your list of things to fix or manage or something else that you need to achieve. And this doesn't just change how you feel internally. It changes what can and can't continue in your life. In relationships, for example, things stop just limping along. Some relationships begin to settle and strengthen because the constant friction underneath them just disappears. Others become very clear very quickly in a way that stops you spending years holding something together that isn't actually supporting you at all. And that level of clarity alone can completely change the direction of your life. And this can happen in other areas of life too, as friction points that turn up as people can quite quickly transform as those people simply withdraw from your life. And what's really going on here isn't that you're failing in all of these things or you're coping really badly or somehow just doing your life wrong. Most of the time, it's a lot simpler than that. So when you're constantly needed, let's say at work or in your relationships or maybe your family life, you're spending a lot of time just responding to other people, to their demands and to the expectations that they have. It's almost like there's no off switch where you can just claim a bit of your own life just for yourself. And when that goes on for long enough, your system never really gets a chance to downshift. You don't really get to settle. There's never a pause. And over time, that starts to show up in all sorts of small ways. Your patience might get shorter. Your tolerance levels drop. And things that never used to bother you suddenly do. And this is because your nervous system has been running in a constant state of low-level overload for a really long time. It's not because you're weak or you don't have the ability, and it's not because you can't handle things. And most people don't actually notice this happening while it's happening. They just gradually adjust to it. They tell themselves that they're tired because life is busy or because this is just the luck of the draw. And by the time they really notice something isn't right in their lives, they've been running like this for years. Now, most solutions don't really address the needs of your nervous system. They'll tell you to manage things better. They'll give you techniques that add yet more things to your daily mental to-do list. They'll ask you to think differently. They'll ask you to push through. But one way or another, you'll probably just end up with something else to add to that mental to-do list. The issue, though, isn't about effort. The issue is that you've lost regular contact with who you really are, that settled, grounded, internal you that you haven't seen in a really long time. The practice that I want to tell you about is a strategy for stepping your mind back so that your body and your nervous system can regulate themselves properly. It's not just a way of managing yourself better or for directing your attention. It's actually a way of stepping out of constant reaction altogether. And when your system has been overloaded for a long time, thinking differently doesn't really help very much. Trying harder doesn't really help either. And it just adds more to that mental to-do list. That's why so many people end up frustrated. They understand what's going on intellectually. They know what they should be doing, but knowing doesn't change how their system is actually operating. The system that I'm going to share with you works at a different level to that, and it doesn't rely on insight or willpower. It works by changing the conditions underneath all of that. With this practice, you're not going to be trying to make anything happen or visualize outcomes or fix anything. What you're going to be doing is supporting a state of internal coherence so that your thoughts, emotions, and responses just stop pulling in different directions. And when that coherence starts to return and you get some sense of balance and centeredness back into your life, you naturally feel more settled and present, and you start to respond to life rather than react to it. Everyday situations just begin to take a lot less out of you. So let me tell you about a practice called Reiki. Well, you may have come across that word previously, and if you have, you probably identify it as just a simple energy healing technique. But what most people don't realize is that Reiki is also a profound and powerful personal development system that is built on techniques and methods that are designed to revolutionize the way you relate to yourself and bring calm, centeredness, and peace into your daily life. It's about creating the conditions where your internal system can return to a state of balance on its own. And from that place, you start to experience how the daily pressures at work, in your relationships, and at home start to lift. Life becomes quieter, steadier, and a lot more unforced. I came to Reiki back in 1996 as a consequence of losing my mother, losing my job, and my marriage collapsing, all in the space of a couple of years. So life was a bit of a mess for me back then, and I needed a fix. Reiki was that fix, and it completely transformed everything that followed. I started teaching Reiki at the end of 97 and then went on to write 3 books on the subject, one of them becoming the standard international textbook on the particular tradition that I'll be teaching you. Celebrities, film directors, fashion icons, and high-profile professionals are just some of the people that have taken this training drawn from across Egypt, where I lived for more than 2 decades. I've also taught in the UK, Cyprus, Jordan, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, and parts of Eastern Europe. And I teach from a very grounded perspective, steeped in tradition, authenticity, and philosophical depth. You will not find any new age or woo-woo tropes in what I do. This is about a radical overhaul of your life structure with results that you can verify, not just a tinkering around the edges of your problems. When you work with Reiki in the way that it is designed to be worked with, you're not working with it in the traditional sort of energy healing context. You're actually working with it in a way that will help to modify your behavior, flip your mindset, and allow your system to become much more coherent, settled, and more stable at an energetic level. And that's really important. To give you a good example, children, for instance, are extremely sensitive to energy, and they respond far more readily to how you are than to what you say or what you do. When you're working with Reiki, you can actively bring calm into their system, not by trying to soothe them or manage them, but by using the energy itself to support regulation in their bodies. That's why children often settle more easily. You won't have so much struggle at bedtimes when they don't want to sleep. Their sleep will improve because their nervous systems are responding to the energy that you're holding for them and offering to them. You can also use this very directly with children when they hurt themselves. Bumps, knocks, falls, emotional upsets, all of the everyday things that all children are subject to. Instead of panic or distress, you can bring the energy in straight away to reduce pain and help them to settle into calmness. And children tend to love it. They often experience Reiki as something really reassuring, almost as if you've developed some sort of superpower, and they relax really quickly. It doesn't replace medical care, of course, when that's needed, but it can dramatically reduce distress and help them recover a lot more calmly. And that same principle applies everywhere else in your life. At work, for instance, people don't just respond to your words, they actually respond to your presence. And when you're working with energy, that presence becomes steadier and more coherent. Another change people often notice is that their intuition becomes much more reliable. In a very practical way, you start to pick up things earlier. You notice when something feels slightly off before it turns into a problem, or you sense when a conversation needs to happen, when a boundary needs attention, or when a decision just can't be delayed anymore. Because there's less internal noise, those signals are clearer and much easier to trust. And this isn't something you consciously try to project. You're not doing anything to people. What's changing is your baseline state, and other nervous systems respond to that automatically. That's why these shifts often feel very subtle at first, but then very obvious in hindsight. And as you raise your energy, you become more magnetic to those around you. You start to naturally draw towards you the people and the support that you need for your work, and life just becomes easier. It just flows better. And you might find yourself in more influential positions, leading meetings rather than just chasing outcomes. Friction reduces, and at work, difficult relationships often begin to just smooth out. Things start to flow more naturally, and opportunities arise simply because you are energetically more aligned with them. Meetings tend to flow better because there is much less resistance in the room. People become more amenable to you, even without realizing why, because they are unconsciously responding to the energetic signal that you're giving off. You find that you're no longer pushing or compensating at work, and that state of flow makes you even more magnetic. Over time, this can shift your present position. Professionally, you could find yourself on the right side of decisions more often. You're drawn into the center of things rather than doing the menial legwork on the edges. And opportunities begin to come towards you because your energy is more in alignment with them. Personal relationships can also be impacted. When your resonance changes, other people naturally adjust their response, reduce the tension in uncomfortable patterns which can soften interactions, and therefore your relationships become less reactive and a lot more harmonious. When your energetic state changes, people respond differently to you. Some relationships naturally deepen because there's less friction and defensiveness. Others can quietly fall away because they're no longer a match for how you're living and relating anymore. That process tends to be far cleaner and less painful than the years of tension that can often come before it. Of course, Reiki isn't a magic bullet. You do need to work at it at the level where these things actually organize themselves, the energetic level, so that life starts to feel more fluid, more supportive, and far more effortless. And of course, if you do want to engage with Reiki as a healing discipline, by all means, you can do that. So at this point, let me be very clear about something. What I've been talking to you about today isn't for everyone, and it isn't meant to be. Working with Reiki in an authentic way takes commitment and dedication. It takes a willingness to engage with yourself honestly rather than looking for just quick fixes. But you will get a lot of support on that journey. Let me make clear again that Reiki isn't just a casual energy therapy. It's a disciplined, personal, spiritual development practice. Now, some people will hear this and feel curious about what all of this involves. Others know immediately that it's not for them. And both responses are perfectly fine. But if what I've been talking about resonates with you, the next step isn't to rush into anything. It's simply to stay with what I've been talking about, learn a little more, reflect, and see whether this feels like the right kind of support for where you are in your life right now. If you do decide to explore this training, know that it's about developing a practice that's going to support your life with a lot more steadiness, clarity, and ease. What people often discover through this process is that the life they want isn't something that they need to chase. It's a life that already exists, but with a resonance that needs to be rediscovered through returning to their core selves, with Reiki acting as a catalyst or magnifier for what is genuinely aligned with who they truly are. What's important here is that you've started to understand that there's a different way of approaching life, and it's one that will deliver a lot more freedom and the inner stillness that you've been missing for a really long time.